Hello everyone, my name is Timo and today I'm gonna share with you my build, tips and tricks and playstyle for Lady Geist and Deadlock. So first of all, let's go through the Lady Geist abilities. First ability is the Essence Bomb. You sacrifice some of your health to launch a bomb that deals the damage. First upgrade gives you 2 meters of radius, second 60 damage, and third that bombs leaves a toxic mass on the ground, dealing 26% of that original damage per second for 6 seconds. Life Drain is you create a tether that drains enemies' health over time and it heals you back. It can also be alternatively cast to friendly heroes if you have this option turned on. First upgrade gives you 20 more damage per second. Second upgrade, it's a 2-second longer duration. And a third upgrade is enemy is silenced while being life drained. Requires line of sight in order for the silence to work. Third ability is Malice. You sacrifice some of your health to launch a Blood Shards. First upgrade, the Malice reduces the cooldown by 3 seconds. Second upgrade increases the damage. And the third upgrade increases the amount of blood shard. Last but not least, Lady Geist ultimate is Soul Exchange, is that you swap health levels with an enemy target. There is a minimum health percentage that enemies can be brought down to and a minimum amount of health received based on victim's current health. First upgrade is negative 38 second cooldown reduction. Second upgrade is negative 10% enemy minimum health. And the third upgrade is on cast, you will receive a 40% fire rate and 40% spirit resist for 8 seconds. Strengths and weaknesses of Lady Geist. So one of the strongest points about Lady Geist is that she is relatively a good laner and she's really strong in 1v1 scenarios. I personally most always get matched in a solo lanes, sometimes in a duo lanes, but most of the time in solo lanes, especially in ranked. And she is relatively strong, especially in a recent patch that we see that the spirit builds and altogether the spirit focused heroes are much stronger at the moment. I find Lady Geist is quite challenging to deal with, especially if you're playing against her, and if you're playing especially against a very competent Lady Geist player, it's a big menace and a big powerhouse to reckon with. One of the strengths is that her poke during the laning stage with a combo of Malice and Bomb is very huge, because once you start applying stacks of Malice, it would mean that the enemy will take more and more damage from all of your abilities. So every single stack of Malice, and you can see the stacks on top of the enemy's health bar, increases the amount of damage that Lady Geist deals by 15%. So right now it's at 40%, and when we go to 5 stacks, which is the maximum amount of stacks that you can have, is 75% increase in damage. So in the early game, you won't be able necessarily to spam heaps your 3-1 combo, but in a late game, Lady Geist will become a problem because she will be just dealing and applying a lot of stacks. So that's one of the biggest strengths of Lady Geist. In early game, she's a good, strong laner, but you have to play very conservatively because, mind you, every single time you cast your abilities, it takes your health. So you have to be very careful in how you deal with it. So in order to deal with that, let's quickly jump into the itemization and the first 2 items that I usually get on Lady Geist while I'm laning. I almost usually go Restorative Shard, if not my first item, then usually second, because that gives me a little bit of health back from enemy heroes when I shoot them and I try to trade with them. And usually the second item that I go for is a headshot booster, obviously, because I think still that this item is very strong even after several nerfs in the current meta as well. So one of the biggest weaknesses of Lady Geist is lack of her mobility. She's got a very decent sprint speed on default. 7.8 is very good value. However, she doesn't really have anything in her kit that gives her invulnerability frames or anything like that. Like, she doesn't have any escapes or jumps or dashes or anything. So the first tier 3 item that I tend to purchase on Lady Geist to compensate for that weakness of mobility is Warp Stone. Because if we reset our character to level 1, Soul Exchange that's her ultimate that allows you to swap with the enemy target, is actually very short range. And if you're playing against people who know how Lady Geist works, and if you get yourself to a very low health, they will know that you're trying to bait and trying to like dash jump towards them to use 4. So they will play very cautiously against you and will try to kill you within the distance. So for that reason, we usually get Warp Stone, we jump, and we swap the health with our ultimate. In my opinion, Lady Geist in the team at the current meta can fulfill several roles. She can be either a very strong lane bully and a 1v1 character that just goes into the side lanes, farms, pushes the objectives, and basically whenever you have your ult up, it's really hard to contest the objective push that she has, because no matter how much damage you deal to Lady Geist, if you're a full health, like I can lose a whole trade as Lady Geist, and then I can just ult them and get all the health back, and now they are down to the amount of HP that I had. So then I just malice and I bomb them, and that's a kill. Especially in a late game, one of the strength sides of the Lady Geist, whenever you split pushing, if you upgraded your life drain to a 3rd level, you get, as long as you're within the line of sight of the enemy, they are silenced whilst your life drain is on. And if we think about it, the duration at the top level at the end of the game is 4 seconds. That's 4 seconds of silence that you get for free, which is really strong considering that you do not need to get a silence glyph. So it saves you 3,000 souls that you can invest elsewhere during your gameplay. The second role that Lady Geist will fulfill mostly in the team fights is somewhat of a bruiser slash tank that you will go in, you will fight the enemy as much as you can, you will take a lot of damage in the meantime, and then you will swap the health with your ult with either another tank over there squishy and get healed back to the full health. And then you'll also be dealing heaps of damage with the blood shards and the bomb. Especially when we buy superior cooldown, improved reach, and I usually put all of these items onto my 1. I usually put the Mystic Reverb on 1 as well. That's a huge area that you just deny and keep on dealing damage at. When you contesting the objectives, this combination of skills and items on bomb just makes it almost impossible to stand under the enemy walkers or under the enemy base bosses, as they're called now, under the enemy guardians, basically. When it comes down to the playstyle, usually as Lady Geist, you want to ideally you want to win the lane, and you have all of the tools that lets you do so. But in the beginning of the game, Lady Geist is extremely vulnerable, because the more you use your abilities in the beginning of the game, the more damage you deal to yourself, harder it is for you to sustain during the laning phase, because people will be aggressively trading against you, and you have to spend HP in order to use your Essence Bomb and Malice. And in my guide, this is the first 2 abilities that I usually will get. Very rarely I will go for Life Drain, because Life Drain on level 1 does not really deal a lot of damage in my opinion, and doesn't really bring that much sustain. So in my build, I usually tend to level it either third, after the bomb and soul exchange, or last, depending on how the game goes. If I really, really need silence urgently, I would level up my life drain first. So in the early game, in the laning stage, you try to at least be even with a matched opponent. Ideally, you would want to win the lane, and by the 8th minute mark, you want to be able to shove the waves as fast as you can, and then either zip back towards the back camps on the map and farm the camps, because as Lady Geist, you're an extremely efficient jungler, since you have your Malice and Bomb combo, and that deals huge amount of damage. You can kill the camps very fast, but most importantly, you can steal the enemy camps quite quite fast as well. So that's one of the other things that Lady Geist is extremely strong, is that she can go around the map, around the enemy side of the map, and tier 1 camps is usually enough 1 malice and 1 bomb, even in the early game and in the mid game, and just give a couple of shots and the enemy camp is gone and you stole basically the farm from them. So now they have to either sacrifice and risk their own lives to go into your side of the map to clear the camps, or they just lose out on the farm. So that kind of forces a lot of plays around that as well. In the mid game, I usually try to extensively farm where there is a jungle farm available. Again, as a Lady Geist, you're a very quick farmer, you're a very quick jungler, so you can shove lanes very efficiently and then go clear up the camps and look for the opportunities to push the objectives. As I said earlier in the strengths part of the guide, she's an extremely challenging opponent to 1v1 against because of the amount of damage she can take and then swap back and you still have to fight her. So unless they bring 2 people to match your push, you almost always, considering that you're even souls value, you should almost always win the exchange. So let's quickly have a look at the build as well. In a laning phase, we usually rush headshot booster, velocity, high velocity mag, and restorative shot. That's kind of our sustain and damage. Then we get endurance speed, sprint boost, and mystic burst and mystic reach. I usually tend to go these 3 first, then I would go mystic burst and endurance speed, and sprint boost closer to like the last few items that I usually get in vitality in tier 1 if I'm looking for rotations. Slowing Hex is my personal favorite. It's extremely useful against people like Lash, even like Mirage or Moin Krill. Anyone who's got dashes or any type of movement abilities that lets them escape or engage in you is really good. And in general, Slowing Hex kind of makes people panic a little bit more and makes them much easier to kill. Heal and Ride is relatively optional item. I tend to buy it quite often because it's just a very strong item. It gives you 3 spirit, gives you some health, and it obviously heals you. I tend to sell Heal and Ride almost as soon as I have enough spare souls to buy a Divine Barrier, because Divine Barrier is just an extremely amazing item at the moment. So in an upgrade / mid category, I usually get Kinetic Dash because, again, Geist's ability to split push is great. So you get this juicy boost to fire speed and you get extra 5 ammo rounds. But you also get a dash jump for the price of 1 stamina. I absolutely love Kinetic Dash. I almost run this item on most of my characters. And I think Geist benefits from it as well. Especially considering if you already have Kinetic Dash and Warp Stone, and then you swap health, that's like a lot of ground covered in just 1 dash and a blink. Spirit Lifesteal for sustain, Divine Barrier for sustain as well, and so you can trade and force fights. 1v1 fights is amazing, plus you can save teammates as well. Headhunter and Pristine Emblems, first 2 upgrades that I tend to buy as well. Then improve cooldown on bomb, improved burst, and improved reach also goes on bow. Mystic Vulnerability is something that I sometimes consider going for. Sometimes I actually entirely leave it out from my build because Escalating Exposure and Mystic Vulnerability, that's the items I usually tend to not take, and I usually would go for Mystic Reverb instead because it's just such an amazing item. Mystic Reverb, I usually put on Bomb instead of Malips. I know that there are players out there who tend to put Mystic Reverb on Malice instead of the Bomb. In that regard, if you are playing around Malice, I would put Superior cooldown still on Bomb or your ult, depending on how you want to do it. Improved Reach also I would play either on Bomb or on your ult. And then Mystic Reverb on your 3, so you can get more damage out of it from the Malice. But I personally prefer to put all my eggs in the same basket and just put everything on the Essence Bomb because it just deals a lot of damage. From the late luxuries, it really depends on how your match is going, because it is a very expensive items that you're looking for. If you are on even ground, Mystic Reverb would be ideal first buy. If not, Leech, great sustain. It gives you bullet, lifesteal, and spirit lifesteal. Amazing on all of the characters. Lady Geist loves it the most because again, you're using a lot of HP in the process. Spiritual Overflow, Crippling Headshot, Escalating Exposure, and Soul Rebirth. Soul Rebirth, if you know that the game is about to end and you really need to win those fights and stay even longer in those fights, is an absolutely amazing item. So Spirit Armor is one of those items that I definitely get on Geist as well. And one of the biggest reason why you actually would want to benefit from Spirit Armor is that you deal to yourself spirit damage with the Essence Bomb and Malice. So Spirit Armor negates some of that, plus we are in a excessive spirit heavy meta at the moment. So those items transition and benefit greatly from just being on your character in general. That should wrap up itemization, and I will move on into the game and we'll see how that build performs in the game with the real gameplay against real people. Let's see you then.